Alright, what's going on, guys? Today I'm going to be giving you my NFL Week 1 DraftKings picks. I'm very excited to bring you guys this video. I'm very hyped for this NFL season. Football is finally here. I think we're definitely going to have a great NFL season. We'll be providing you guys with these videos every week. Weeks 1 through 17, I should have a video up. And even in the playoffs, I believe I will be making videos for the playoff slates. So if you are new to the channel, please be sure to subscribe. I will be uploading these videos every week. So if you are new to the channel, make sure you subscribe. I really appreciate you clicking on the video. And for all my returning subscribers, thank you as well for clicking on the video. These videos are going to be similar to my MLB and NBA videos, except I am going to go a little bit more in depth. Instead of just giving you guys like a core 5 or 6 plays that you can build around, we'll still be doing that, but I'm also going to go position by position and just give you guys some players that I'm targeting at each position, like 5 or 6 players that I like, that I think you are going to want to get exposure to. We'll be doing that at each position. And then as we go position by position, I'm sort of going to build you guys a core lineup that I will be using for cash games. Most of my success has come from cash games, just in all sports. I just feel like I'm better in cash games. So as we go position by position, I'll give you some GPP plays that I like, but I will be focusing on cash games, giving you guys the players that I'm targeting for cash games at each position. And I'll build sort of a core that you can build around just as we go. So yeah, let's go ahead and get started with quarterback. Alright, so looking at quarterback this week, our most expensive QB is Ben Roethlisberger going up against the Browns. I don't think I'm going to be paying up for Big Ben. We do have this narrative that he does struggle on the road. If you just look at his DraftKings scoring home and road splits last year, it is a pretty big drastic split. Last year at home, in 7 games, Big Ben, he averaged 25 DraftKings points. And on the road, he only averaged 14 DK points. So Ben does struggle on the road, and I don't think I want to play him at 7,300. I don't really feel comfortable rostering him as the most expensive quarterback. I do really like the Steelers as an offense this week, but that's mainly getting exposure to AB and Le'Veon Bell. Don't know if I'll have much exposure to Big Ben, so I'm not going to be on him. But the quarterbacks I do like this week, sort of in the mid-tier, really like the Seattle-Green Bay game just as a stack. I think that game's going to be very high scoring. It does have one of the highest totals on the slate. So I really like Aaron Rodgers this week for GPPs, and I like Russell Wilson for GPPs as well. Those are 2 quarterbacks that I'm definitely going to have some exposure to in my tournaments. But I think the way to go in cash games this week is going to be definitely to pay down at quarterback. There's a guy that I like for my cash game lineup that we'll get onto in a second. But for GPPs in this upper tier, do like Aaron Rodgers and Russell Wilson. I also like that Oakland-Tennessee game. That's a game I will be stacking up in tournaments, so I really like Marcus Mariota and Derek Carr this week. Those are 2 guys I will have exposure to in tournaments. I think that Oakland-Tennessee game is also going to be very high scoring. It does have one of the highest totals on the slate, so you'll want to get exposure to that. And Marcus Mariota, Derek Carr, 2 quarterbacks I also like. Jameis Winston, another guy I really like this week going up against Miami. I think him and Mike Evans is going to be a stack that I have in a tournament lineup. I think Winston's really going to have a good year this year. I think he's really going to break out. So if you are looking in the mid-tier for a quarterback, definitely target Jameis Winston this week. But in the cheaper value tier, I think going for cash games, you're going to want to pay down this week. There is a guy that I really like, just 5,300 I will be looking to put in my cash game core. And that's Carson Wentz going up against Washington. I think if you are playing cash games this week, Carson Wentz is a guy you want. He's just too cheap going up against a pretty bad Washington defense, a defense that's pretty bad against the pass. Last year they allowed 258 passing yards per game, which was towards the bottom of the league. So I think this is a really good spot for Carson Wentz. Wentz is a guy that does provide you with some upside. He will run at times, so he can acquire you fantasy points with his legs, which is always nice. So I think Carson Wentz, if you're looking to go for a cash game quarterback, he's a guy you want today at 5,300. I'm not sure how highly owned he will be in tournaments, so you could definitely fade him for GPPs. But for cash games, just given the matchup and the price, I think Carson Wentz is a guy you want. Then one more quarterback I want to mention that I think you could target in your cash game. I probably would much rather have Wentz over him, but Deshaun Kaiser going up against Pittsburgh. Kaiser will be getting the start, and he is just 4,800. He is another guy that provides you with some upside because he is a pretty good mobile quarterback. He can provide you with fantasy points with his legs. So I think Kaiser is going to be a guy that people go to today if they are looking to go cheap at quarterback. You could target him in your cash games for just 4,800, but I would much rather just find the extra salary and get to Carson Wentz, who I just feel a lot more comfortable with. And I think he is definitely a safer option. So I'm going to be putting Carson Wentz in the core lineup for just his price tag of 5,300. But yeah, those are just some quarterbacks I like. I obviously can't go through every single play just because that would take forever. The video would be 50 minutes long. But the guys I'm looking to target for GPPs, I like Aaron Rodgers, I like Russell Wilson, Mariota, Derek Carr, Jameis Winston. And then for cash games, I think you want to go cheap at quarterback. So Carson Wentz is a guy you want to target. Deshaun Kaiser, if you really want to punt, I think he's another option. But yeah, those are just some quarterbacks I like this week. Let's go ahead and move on to running back. All right, so for running back this week, when it comes to cash games, I'm sure you've heard this before, but you just jam in Le'Veon Bell, David Johnson, at least one of these guys. You want to have them in your cash game lineup. I think it's going to be pretty hard to fit both of them in because DraftKings has got a lot better with the salaries. Last year we saw Le'Veon Bell and DJ were both like 7, 8K last year, and it was so easy just to fit both of them in your lineup. But now with them being 94 and 9,800, I think you are going to have to take a stand. If we're just choosing one, I think Le'Veon Bell is the better option this week at 9,800. Going up against Cleveland, I'm going to go ahead and plug him in the core as a cash game play we can target. This is just such a good spot for Le'Veon Bell. Him and David Johnson, two of the most consistent running backs in the league. They also provide you with a ton of upside, so they are definitely great GPP plays as well. And especially given Lev Bell's matchup against Cleveland, I think he has so much upside here. I believe last year against Cleveland he had like a monster game, put up like 40 or 50 DraftKings points. So I definitely think you want exposure to Bell, even in your GPP lineups, even if you play multiple lineups, you at least want to have him in one of them. And if you're playing cash games this week, I think he's the running back you want. If you can fit in David Johnson and Le'Veon Bell into your cash game lineup, obviously that's a great combo, but you are going to have to really have to punt some other positions. So I don't think I'm going to be able to fit them both in. So if we're just choosing one, love Le'Veon Bell this week. Going up against Cleveland, definitely think he's going to have a great game. He provides us with a very high floor, which is what we want for our cash game. So I like Le'Veon Bell as a running back we can pay up for. And then just looking at other mid-tier running backs, another guy I like, going back to that Oakland-Tennessee game, really like DeMarco Murray this week for GPPs. Like I said, I think that game's going to be very high scoring. And we saw DeMarco Murray have some really monster games last year, so I do like him at 7,400. For a little bit cheaper, also really like Jay Ajayi going up against Tampa Bay. He was another guy that really broke out last year, had some monster games as well. We saw him get a heavy workload last year. With Jay Cutler as the quarterback in Miami now, you would think they would, or the Miami Dolphins, they would lean a little bit more on Ajayi, go a little bit more run heavy. So I think the workload is definitely going to be there for Ajayi. I think you could consider him in cash games at 6,500. If you can fit him in, that would be pretty hard. But I do like Ajayi this week. I think he has upside for tournaments, and I think he will get the workload. He will have the volume that you want for cash games. So like Jay Ajayi this week. Darren McFadden going up against the Giants. Don't really like McFadden this week. I'm not sure if he'll be popular or not. But with Ezekiel Elliott suspended for this game, McFadden should get the workload, but it's a pretty bad matchup against a really good Giants defense. And I also think McFadden's pretty expensive. I think he's pretty overpriced at 6,100. If I'm just looking in that price range for a running back, I'd much rather just find the extra salary to get to Ajayi or pay down to the guy I'm going to be plugging in as my second running back for cash. And that's Todd Gurley at just 6K going up against the Colts. Todd Gurley is the RB2 that I like for cash games this week. I think the workload should definitely be there. And given the matchup against the Colts, I love this spot for Gurley at just 6K. This Colts defense, they're just not good versus the pass or the run. Pretty bad defense in general. So I definitely think Todd Gurley is in a good spot here. And at just 6K, he makes a lot of sense as an RB2 option given his price and given the matchup against the Colts. Gurley should have a really good game, so I do like him as an RB2 for our cash game core at just 6K. And then other running backs we can target for a little bit cheaper. One guy I like for GPPs, probably wouldn't recommend him in cash games because I'm not sure how heavy his workload will be. But for GPPs, I do like Christian McCaffrey at just 5,400 going up against San Francisco. McCaffrey does provide us with plenty of upside for tournaments. He does have the ability to catch the ball out of the backfield. That's obviously what he's best at. With DK scoring being full PPR, McCaffrey could definitely post a really good game here. But for cash games, I'm not sure if the workload will be there. I'm not sure if he'll be an every down back or if the Panthers will just use him in third down situations. So I'm not sure if I'd target McCaffrey in cash. I think he's a little bit too risky. But for tournaments, with his ability to catch the ball out of the backfield, I definitely think he's an option at 5,400. And yeah, so those are just some running backs I'm looking to target this week. For cash games, I think you want to either go Lev Bell and DJ if you can fit that, or if you're looking for a little bit of cheaper RB2, I like Todd Gurley at 6K. And then for GPP, some other running backs I'll be targeting. DeMarco Murray I really like, Jay Ajayi. And then if I'm looking to go cheap, I also really like Christian McCaffrey as another running back that provides us with some upside for tournaments. But yeah, those are just some running backs I like. Let's go ahead and move on to wide receiver. All right, so for wide receiver this week, if we're looking at cash games, I don't think we're going to be able to pay up for receiver. Since we paid up for Le'Veon Bell, we can't really afford AB or Julio Jones. Can't really afford these guys in our cash game lineup. But for GPPs, obviously these guys are great plays. If I had to choose one to pay up for, I'd probably lean Antonio Brown against Cleveland. But I also really like Julio Jones against the Bears as well. I think he is in a really good spot. He provides us with plenty of upside. We saw Julio had some monster games last year, so he's obviously a great GPP play. OBJ, I probably won't have much exposure to him, but he is another guy. Dude always has upside. He could just post a monster game at any time. But if I'm just having to choose one of those guys to pay up for, it's definitely going to be AB. And then looking at some other wide receivers in the mid-tier, like I said back at quarterback, I think Jameis Winston, he's going to have a really good year this year. I think he's going to have a really breakout year. And I think Mike Evans is going to go along with that. Winston leans heavily on Evans. Evans gets a ton of targets. So if you're looking for a GPP combo, do like Jameis Winston as Mike Evans, two guys you can target. I will definitely have some exposure to that in tournaments. Jordy Nelson going up against Seattle. I really like that game as a game stack, but I'm not sure if Jordy Nelson, what his matchup will be. If he will be guarded by Richard Sherman, that I don't think I'm going to have much exposure to Jordy Nelson. If Nelson is guarded by Sherman, then there is a Packers wide receiver that I like that's a lot cheaper. They will get onto in a second, but just depending on matchup, I don't think I'm going to be on Nelson since he will most likely be guarded by Richard Sherman. One guy that I really like for GPPs in the mid-tier is Amari Cooper going up against the Titans. I think he is a really good play, really good stack. That game just in general is a great game stack. You could definitely pair him with Derek Carr in your tournament lineups. Really like that. But for cash games, I don't think we're going to be able to have the salary to fit him in. So we're going to have to obviously go cheaper in cash. But getting towards the cheaper tier, this is where I think we found a cash game play here. Larry Fitzgerald going up against Detroit for just 5,900. I think he's a good play that we can build around in our cash games. So I'm going to plug him into the core. I just think Larry Fitz is too cheap. Going up against a pretty bad Detroit defense. Fitzgerald a really good cash game play just because he gets the volume. He gets targeted every week by Carson Palmer. The targets were always there last year for Fitz, 10, 10, 12, 7, 8, 9, 14, 11, 18, 7, 4, 9, 11, 9, 9, 4, 7. So Carson Palmer did lean heavily on his veteran last year, and I don't think anything's going to change here. I do always like to roster veterans week one, just because we know they're going to produce. And Larry Fitzgerald being one of those guys, the target should definitely be there. And given this matchup against Detroit, I think Larry Fitzgerald makes a lot of sense in our cash game core. Just given his price tag at 5,900 and the matchup, Larry Fitzgerald, a guy you should be targeting in your cash games this week. Just above him for tournaments, I do want to mention Michael Crabtree at 6K going up against Tennessee. Like I said, I like that game, so if you want to do a Carr to Crabtree stack, or maybe even Carr Cooper Crabtree, like that for GBPs, like a full-on Oakland stack, I think it has a lot of upside in this spot. And then just looking for a little bit cheaper wide receivers, there are a couple guys I like in this 5,300 price range. Jarvis Landry and Devontae Parker being two guys I like. I believe I heard some guys say that during the preseason, Jay Cutler, he did lean heavily on Devontae Parker. So I think Parker is in a good spot here, just 5,300. I think he makes a lot of sense if you're looking to go cheap, looking for a cheap wide receiver. He was a guy that we saw really break out last year towards the end of the year. So if he can definitely keep that momentum going this year, I do like Devontae Parker. Just looking at a mid-tier receiver, I think you can consider him at 5,300. The guy I like from that Seattle Green Bay game, like I said, if Jordy Nelson is going to be guarded by Richard Sherman, I think that could open up a lot of targets for Devontae Adams. So I do really like him at 5,200. He's another receiver I'll be looking to target. If Nelson is going to be guarded by Richard Sherman, then I think Adams could have a really good game. He was another guy we saw really break out last year. Aaron Rodgers did lean heavily on him, so like Davante Adams, given his price tag of just 5,200, I think that Seattle Green Bay game is going to be very high scoring. So I think you're going to want to get exposure. And I think Davante Adams does make a lot of sense given his price tag. But yeah, those are just some wide receivers I like this week. Obviously, if you're going to pay up, Antonio Brown, Julio Jones, great plays. I don't think I'm going to be on OBJ this week. I'm not even sure if he's going to play in that game. Then looking in the mid-tier, I like Mike Evans. Amari Cooper I like from that Oakland-Tennessee game. Also really like Michael Crabtree. I think Larry Fitzgerald makes a lot of sense as a cash game play this week. And then some cheaper receivers I like. Jarvis Landry, Devontae Parker, and Davante Adams are guys I'm going to be targeting in the cheaper end. But yeah, that's pretty much it for receiver. Let's go ahead and move on to tight end. Alright, so for tight end this week, I don't think I'm going to be looking to pay up here, especially not for cash games. There is a cheap tight end that I think everybody's going to be on in cash games, but for good reason, just given his price tag in the matchup. Even for GPPs, I'm not sure if I want to pay up for Greg Olsen or Jordan Reed. If I was to pay up at tight end, I would definitely go with Jimmy Graham against Green Bay. I really like that matchup for Jimmy Graham, and I like that game in general, so if you want to do a Russell Wilson-Jimmy Graham combo in your tournaments, I do really like that. Graham is pretty expensive, but he might have some pretty low ownership in tournaments, and he does have the upside. So I like Jimmy Graham. Also like Delaney Walker. Going back to that Oakland-Tennessee game, I think Walker provides us with plenty of upside given his price tag. Martellus Bennett as well. I really like Bennett this year, going with Aaron Rodgers. We saw Aaron Rodgers lean heavily on his tight ends last year. Jared Cook, he leaned heavily on him. I think Bennett could see plenty of targets this year, and I think he could definitely have some good games. So I do like Martellus Bennett if we're looking in the mid-tier. But when we get down to the cheapies, there is a cheap tight end that I really like this week for my cash games that I'm going to go ahead and plug into the core, and that's Zach Ertz at just 3,500 going up against Washington. I think a Wentz to Ertz combo is going to be pretty popular in cash this week, but it's for good reason. These guys, they're just too cheap, and given the matchup against Washington, I think Ertz is in a really good spot here that we compare him with Carson Wentz. I would think that Ertz would start to get a little bit more targets this year. With Jordan Matthews getting traded to the Bills, Carson Wentz is going to have to spread the ball around a little bit more, and hopefully Ertz should soak up some of those targets. So I think the volume should definitely be there this week. At just 3,500, he makes a lot of sense in your cash game lineup. Just given his price tag, pairing him with Carson Wentz, that definitely allows you to pay up for Le'Veon Bell, a guy that has a ton of upside and a very high floor. Going with Ertz as a cheap tight end does allow us to fit in Lev Bell. So if you're looking to go cheap at tight end, I like Zach Ertz this week, just given his price tag in the matchup. For GPPs, you could probably fade Zach Ertz. He was definitely inconsistent last year. But for cash games, I definitely think he makes a lot of sense, just given his price tag. The volume should be there. The target should be there with Jordan Matthews gone. I think Zach Ertz is definitely in a good spot here. So I like him as a cash game play we can target at tight end for 3,500. And yeah, that's pretty much it for tight ends. There's not a ton of tight ends I really like this week. Mainly going to have my exposure to Zach Ertz. Jimmy Graham will be a guy target. Delaney Walker and Martellus Bennett. Those will be some guys I look towards. But not really seeing a ton of tight ends that I'm really feeling good about. So just going to keep it to that small core. But yeah, that's pretty much it for tight ends. Let's go ahead and move on to defense. Alright, so for defense this week, if we're looking for cash game, the defensive target for cash games, I think you can pay up if you want to target a cash game defense. The Bills and Texans are the two defenses that are in really good spots. The Bills are obviously in a great spot going up against the Jets, a team that we're going to be picking on all year. The Jets' offense is just so bad. So this is obviously a great spot for the Bills. But I don't know if I want to pay $3,900 for them in cash. I don't think that makes a lot of sense. If you do play on FanDuel, I believe the Bills are very cheap on FanDuel. They make a lot of sense on FanDuel in your cash game lineup. But at $3,900, I don't think it makes a lot of sense to pay that much for a defense in cash. So I don't want to play them in cash. I will have exposure to them in tournaments. Same thing goes for the Texans. Probably won't be playing them in cash just given the price. But for tournaments, they obviously have a ton of upside going up against Jacksonville. Jacksonville was a team that I picked on all year with defenses, or all year last year. It seemed like every week Blake Bortles was throwing a pick six. And that Jaguars offense is going to be pretty bad this year as well. So love this spot for Houston. You can definitely target them in your GPPs. But if we're looking for a cash game defense, I think there is one defense that's sort of in the mid-tier that stands out to me, and that's the Rams at just 3,200. going up against the Colts, who I believe are going to be without Andrew Luck. Really like this spot for the Rams, so I'm going to go ahead and plug them into the core, just given their price at 3,200. I think this is a great spot for the Rams. Like I said, the Colts are going to be without Andrew Luck, so that offense, it's already pretty bad, but without Luck, it's just going to be even worse. So I definitely think the Rams are in a great spot here. I think they make a lot of sense in your cash game lineup, just given their price tag. And given that the Colts will be without Andrew Luck, and how bad the offense already is, love the Rams today at 3,200. And then if we're looking to go a little bit cheaper, if we're looking to punt defense for our GPPs and maybe load up on some other positions, I think you can definitely target the Giants this week as a cheap defense. The Cowboys, they're going to be without Ezekiel Elliott, and he is a very big part of their offense. So I think the Giants are in a really good spot, especially given their price. The Giants' defense is a way better defense than just being priced 2,600. The Giants might have one of the top defenses this year. So given the fact they're 2,600, they're going to be going up against the Cowboys. They're going to be without Zeke Elliott. I think the Giants do make a lot of sense as a defense you can target if you are looking to go cheap. But yeah, those are just some defenses I'll be targeting. I usually don't play a lot of defenses. I usually just play about 3 or 4. The 3 or 4 that I'll be targeting this week probably will be the Bills, Texans, the Rams, and then if I look to go cheap, I'll get some exposure to the Giants as well. But yeah, that's pretty much it for position by position. Thank you guys so much for watching the video. I do really appreciate it. Like I said, if you are new to the channel, please be sure to subscribe. I will be uploading these NFL videos every week. So if you are new, be sure to subscribe. And also, I would really appreciate it if you guys would leave some feedback down in the comments. Just let me know some of your thoughts going into this Week 1 slate. And if there is a player that you really like that maybe I didn't hit on, be sure to let me know down in the comments. I always love getting feedback from you guys, so if you have any questions, concerns, be sure to let me know down in the comments below. But yeah, that is pretty much it, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Please be sure to like the video. Like I said, please be sure to subscribe as well. I will be uploading these videos every week. So if you are new to the channel, be sure to subscribe. Be sure to like the video as well. Would really appreciate that. And yeah, that's about all I got to say, guys. Good luck this week, and we'll see you next week for Week 2. Good luck, guys.
Sauce it down, sauce it up. You too much, you too much. Ain't enough, ain't enough. Where you from? Throw it out, going out.